members of the Next.js team, and welcome back, Delba, Seb, Josh. Thank you. And Jimmy, yes. Thank you. All right, we did it. Live demo, nothing broke, so that's good. That's good. I feel better now.
High risk.
Yeah. So the first thing top of mind for me, maybe for you all too, use cache. That's awesome. I'm pretty excited about that. Seb, I would love to hear from you. Tell us a little bit more about directives. Like, why do we have these directives? Why is that a good API? And just talk to me a little bit more about the design of use cache.
Well, we have all these capabilities with server actions, and really the key to server actions is this serializable boundary. They can pass in the arguments, serialize them across the network. But another use case for serializable boundaries and talking to other services is caching, because you need to have the ability to serialize the inputs to have a safe cache key to store your entries with. So one of the issues with unstable cache is that it was kind of possible to get this wrong, and you had to manually provide your cache key instead of having it always be safely computed. And you can do this with a runtime, but you still have issues in JavaScript where you can leak all this information accidentally into a cache and cause what's called cache poisoning. And one of those issues is closures. And we did a lot of work of making closures work with server actions, and use cache takes advantage of that as well. But it also allows us to call into a different runtime, a different service, and load these cache entries from a remote as well.
Nice. Yeah, it feels like I can see the parallels there with use server, and I think that the directive design is actually very, very beneficial. And on the surface, you might not realize all the things you get for free, but then you dig into the architecture and you hear a little bit more about why we made that choice versus, unstable cache or an API like that. It's pretty, yeah, I like that a lot. Kind of somewhat related to use cache, G showed in the demo, it was very easy now to run this dynamic code. You have some API call to go get your flight information. I have this dynamic rendering, and I can get that information back. Josh, I'd love to hear a little bit more about this dynamic world that we're living in and how we're able to make Next.js understand the parts of your page that are dynamic.
Well, I'm sure all of you already know this, but the Next.js that you have today does a lot to try to be fast. And to do that, we have a lot of implicit caching. But we found that obviously requires you to understand the framework's behavior much more. And a lot of times when you're just getting started, you kind of expect that when you write something like a fetch, that it's just going to fetch every time a user visits that particular route. So Wyatt's actually going to talk about like the actual implementation a bit more in the PPR talk, or partial pre-rendering talk. But the short of it is that anything that looks like it should be dynamic, anything that's data from some external service, anything that's data from the request itself, Next is just going to understand that is something that needs to be evaluated every time a user visits that particular page. But of course, that wouldn't be great if that was all you could do with Next.js. We'd lose all these amazing benefits for making static sites or making really fast parts of your application. And that's where the explicit caching comes in. And so these two features are really tightly integrated where unless you specify how something should work, we're going to assume it's dynamic. And while, for some use cases, that's not what you want, it's trivial to start kind of adding caching back in with something that's as ergonomic as the use cache directive. But for folks that are building hybrid apps or really dynamic dashboards, it's just going to work from the get-go. And I think the best thing, at least in my opinion about it, is that it doesn't force you to understand Next in totality before you get started. You just download it, start using it, and it basically does what you'd expect it to do. And so this kind of inversion of kind of how you start, as powerful as what we have today, even more probably, but I think maybe more importantly is that it is better aligned with basically the population of both current users, but also people that might be users in the future.
Yeah, I like the way you said it. Basically, if it looks dynamic, if it feels dynamic, it's going to be dynamic code. And whether that's something that is like fetches or talking to databases or even things like dates or random values.
Exactly.
Makes sense. So we talked about caching. We talked about dynamic. Delba, I'm curious, this is going to be an opportunity to teach the community, teach the ecosystem about how you can kind of choose between these different modes. Of course, we talked about it a little bit in the keynote, but how are you thinking about bringing everybody along for this journey?
Oh, so many ideas.
Yeah.
So first, what we need to make sure is that our source of truth, that is our primary content, the content that every Next.js developer consumes, is clear, it's accurate, it's correct, and it's helpful. And that is the Next.js docs. And while you're developing, it is TypeScript and the errors. So that's going to be our focus first. For the Next.js docs, we are planning on rewriting the Next.js docs, not just for this new way of thinking about Next.js, but also to help with that progressive disclosure of complexity. I feel like we made a mistake with the first iteration of the docs because we were learning a lot of the model as we were writing the docs. So for the next few months, we will be focusing on just improving and overhauling the Next.js docs. And then from the error side, while you're developing, Josh and Seb, they have been working really hard to make sure that things are clear. Like, for example, if you use something dynamic, we do need to warn you. Before, that was not there. So you would opt into dynamic silently, and you wouldn't know why. So the error messages are cooking. And fun fact, while we were rehearsing the keynote this morning, we found a bug with one of the errors. And while the keynote was going, Josh and Seb were backstage fixing the error. That's dedication.
Yeah.
Then after that, after we've nailed the primary content, the source of truth, I am hoping that we can rely on our army of Next.js content creators to educate the rest of the community. And I'm sure a lot of content creators will want to learn more and ingest all that information.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like the current state of the docs is they're very explicit, and we talk about caching in excruciating detail, and we have an opportunity to simplify the story here a little bit. So yeah, thank you to all the work that you've done, Rich and Docs team, for all your work you've done. And also the type docs for even the, when you're on cache life, you have those very nice paragraphs.
Yeah.
Those are good, so good job, guys. Jimmy, let's talk about Turbopack.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited. I mean, obviously the demo was very, very cool. I'm excited about the future improvements. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of where we're headed, what you're excited about?
Yeah, sure. So, by the way, I was recording the videos for the demo this weekend, and my mind was blown away by the progress of it. Just you need to try it out at home. This is really get out your laptops right now, install Next 15, run it. But it's just generally mind blowing. In terms of what's coming next for Turbopack, as G said, dev is stable right now. What we're really looking for right now is just your feedback. Try it out, break it, send us the bug report. Tim Nutkens is at home watching all the feedback for Turbopack right now, and we're really going to be on top of it. After that, we're 96% passing build. It's only a matter of weeks until we get it, and then we'll be able to push it as the default for every new Next.js apps. So really excited about this. Really the core focus of the team is going to be about, getting everyone moved over from Webpack to Turbopack. So there's that. Part of that as well is working with the community. If you're an author of a plugin framework and you want to get it working on Turbopack, and you're blocked today, I'm going to be sitting at the MEA booth all day. Come talk to us, and we'll try to get it fixed. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's been great to see support for a lot of loaders already, and I'm sure we'll do even more to have ecosystem compat as more libraries and other applications who were previously on our older compilers config will be able to upgrade. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Thank you to the Turbopack team for all their hard work here. I know it's been a long journey, and y'all have been along on that journey with us, so I'm very excited where we're headed here. I'd like to talk a little bit about React 19. Because with the app router, with Next 15, we're preparing for a React 19 future, which I think we're very excited about. And Josh or Seb, either one of you or maybe both, I would love to hear some of the things that you're excited about with React 19. And it seems like there's been a lot of effort put in to bring the ecosystem along for this upgrade as well, too, and make it as seamless as it can be. So I'd love to hear more.
You want to take that? You want me to?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So React 19, we actually talked about it as if it was going to be out at ReactConf about 6 months ago now. But there is a an issue with kind of like the pre-rendering of sibling children we want to fix, and so we've been the React team's been hard at work at that. But for people who've been using AppRouter for the last 2 years, you've essentially been kind of living in the future with some of the features that are coming to sort of the wider React ecosystem. We vendor React internally, and we depend on some of the stuff that we've added, particularly with the React Server Components packages, to make the AppRouter actually work. But when it goes stable and we can have, bring that back to Pages Router, and there's some, sort of improvements to errors and hydration warnings and stuff like that, that sort of level up React across the board, not just AppRouter specifically within Next.js. I think that's going to be a really nice feature.
Yeah. What I'm really excited about is because we were waiting for the 15 release, we've been trying it out for the past year internally at Vercel. We're really proud of it. It's been working really well for us. We've only released it last week, but we put a lot of time into the upgrade path. This release, we talk about it internally as the new baseline for Next. This is in some ways with the Turbopack dev stable. It's like the real AppRouter to me. And so this release, this upgrade path is really for all of you who have tried the AppRouter with 13 and 14. Maybe you had performance issues. Maybe it was because of me. But give it a try. Investment time is going to be worth it. Promise you, no more big packages after that. We want 15 to be really the worth the investment. You're going to get persistent caching when it comes out easily. We'll do smaller releases. We'll take care. We're really focusing on the upgrade path here. We realize we have 1 million active developer per month, and not all of them can jump into 15 easily. There's tons of users still on Next 11, 12. This upgrade is for you. Take the time. Come harass me about any bugs at the booth again, and I'll make sure we'll get you on Next 15.
Yeah, building off that, Delba, I feel like there's a story here to talk about how we've been investing into the upgrade path for, even Next.js 12, 13, but really 14 to 15 as well, with code mods and CLI. I'd love to hear more about how we're thinking about evolving the entire Next.js ecosystem to this new world.
Yeah, so the challenge that we have is that some of these things are breaking changes, right? So you will have to think about, okay, how do you migrate your application? Luckily, you mentioned code mods and CLI. We have recently revamped the CLI to make it easier. And the CLI will actually guide you through upgrading your application and telling you which code mods to run to help you. So that is one of the things. But I'm sure Josh has other ideas as well of how we can help.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I think, at least to rephrase it, at least for me, we have our upgrade CLI. It's this new base for us to add more code mods into the future as we release changes. But I feel like with Next 15, a not well discussed, but the async request API change, we kind of laid this foundation for the future with, hopefully just a CLI or code mod run.
Yeah, we talked about the PR to add async request APIs was discussed on Twitter a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And at the time, the answer to the question of well, why are you doing this is, it seems like a change. It seems painful. It seems like it's going to be, challenge you to adopt. Obviously, we're sensitive to that. And so the upgrade CLI basically should take care of it for you. There are uncode moddable situations, but they should be rare, and you should have the kind of feedback from the tool to kind of guide you to how to fix that stuff manually. But everything that we showed today is the why. And when we make a breaking change, we have to do it when we have a major version. We don't want to do those often. So you take the opportunity when you have it, and then you just try to make the upgrade path as easy as possible. So we announced, or we showed a number of features that ultimately rely on the fact that the request data is now asynchronous. They're not available in the Next 15 that already shipped on Monday, but they can land in minors. We can ship these as they become stabilized over time. We don't have to do another one Next 16, Next 17 to introduce a lot of these sort of really powerful features here. So, with automatic tools, we have a ton of huge Next.js applications within Vercel itself. So we've seen every possible pattern of code you could potentially write. It's a really good sort of proving ground to make sure that the upgrade path actually works. So we, obviously, as Jimmy says, go bug him if you have any trouble. But no, we want to make this as painless as possible, and set the stage for some really awesome things to come.
Yeah, and not only for, we've obviously spent a lot of time talking about the app router, but we still have many, many developers who are using the pages router, kind of our previous foundation for Next.js. And we're still, of course, investing there. And part of the reason for our release with Next 15 is to also provide a smooth upgrade path for pages router folks, so you can take advantage of Turbopack and Turbopack and caching soon and kind of continue getting all those benefits. Even some of the features in Next.js 15, like Next Form, which is a new component, that works in the pages router as well. So we're really trying to invest across the board in both places to make that upgrade path as easy as possible. Jimmy, I'd love to hear, we've talked about some of the things in Next.js 15, but are there other things that are underrated or features you're excited about? I mean, ESLint 9 support was a big one for the community, so I'm happy that's landed.
Yeah, actually, if you take a look at the blog post, it's genuinely pretty long, and I don't blame anyone for not reading about it. But the thing actually I'm most excited about was the last item in the blog post, which is around build performance improvement. Shout out to Zach Tanner, who's backstage right now fixing bugs, and JJ as well. That's been really great. We also added support for TypeScript for the next config. Shout out to Jiwon as well on that. So that's, those are my favorite feature about Next 15.
It was a long blog post, but it's been in the works for a while. So it's good. There's lots of good things coming in there. A couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up here and keep rocking and rolling for the rest of the day. But I'd love to talk a little bit more about PPR. I mean, we talked in the keynote about used cache and how that's going to lean into that future. And Wyatt has a great talk later. Please go check that out. But I'd love to hear more from any of you all about PPR and how you're thinking about how this meshes with our new worlds.
PPR is incredible. We spent a year since we announced it here. Well, not here, but at NextConf in a different venue. And we've been cooking internally and making sure it actually works the way that we want it to, where it's kind of the best of both worlds, static and dynamic, in one application. We actually had the idea for this new dynamic kind of Next.js independent of PPR. There's a lot that goes into kind of getting there, but it's so perfectly suited for a feature like partial pre-rendering because it helps you define the boundary of what is and is not pre-renderable, and you can make really clear choices about what should be part of the static shell and what should be fetched, maybe you have to read cookies for, some kind of external data or something like that. Or you have a really dynamic dashboard, you always want to have the latest information. But the fact that you can kind of put those into a single application, it's still server components, you get to just await data. You don't have to move fetching to the client if you want to, make it kind of static, but then still have a little bit of dynamic sprinkled throughout. And to plug Wyatt's talk a fifth time, improvements to TTFB, LCP, all the sort of core web vitals that are super important for web applications without having to sacrifice any kind of functionality or limitations on the kind of apps that you can actually build is what is potentially there. And the best part about it is that when you actually adopt, when we make this mode or these APIs available and you kind of have migrated your application to be compatible with it, PPR is already done. You can just turn it on. It'll just work because the application sort of guides you into kind of defining this well-defined boundary of static and dynamic. And you can play with making more of it static or less of it static, cache some data here, or maybe decide not to cache it there. And that was not true a year ago when we started. So we had some rough edges and we worked those out. We want to ship PPR with the kind of paradigm that we showed here today. People have been able to try it in a canary already. So for folks that maybe play with it, it has been available. But when we bring it to like a beta and say you should use this. I think it's going to be with like the model that we've showed off on stage right now.
Mm-hmm. I really like that the model of the migration has shifted from like we had Next.14 and then you would enable PPR and then you need to go through like your whole app and like try to debug and to like create the static shells and you did need a PhD to do that. Like we were having trouble internally doing that for PPR, and instead we took maybe a bit of a longer path to make actually Next.js simpler to then be able to adopt PPR seamlessly. I think that's just really great.
Yeah. There's also a lot of interesting infrastructure work just going on there, making sure that there's no rough edges and that you don't sacrifice performance in some cases, because you don't want it to be a regression. It should always be a strict improvement on what you have today. And there's a lot of, and I think Wyatt's talk will go into some of this, and we'll continue talking more about the infrastructure that we're building at Vercel, but also how we're thinking about how this type of infrastructure can be self-hosted in a more richer edge configured world, or in a simpler self-hosted model as well. I think we can take the same model and deploy it to many different infrastructures as well. There's a lot more technical details there that is really interesting. I think we'll go into more in the future.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface here. And I mean, that's all the questions we have for now, but we're going to be around. Like Jimmy said, please come talk to us at the stands today. Please come find us. We're happy to answer any more questions. We got a jam-packed agenda of stuff for you today, but please give it up for the Next.js team. All right. Thank you.